Hello guys, it's Ian here from Build UK. Welcome to part 2 of the FMC build. We're now moving on to the early stages of wiring for the switches and the buttons. What I'm going to do first is run through and get all the LEDs wired up. I'm colour coding my whole sim, so for LEDs I'm going to be using blue and yellow, blue being the negative, yellow being the positive. And that way, if I get a problem in the sim and I need to trace a wire, I know which colour I need to trace all the way through. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a close-up on how I'm wiring it up and what I'm doing to make it easier for myself. So we've got our string of 4 LEDs here. I'm keeping the red dot, which is the negative side, on my right every time. And all I'm doing is just tainting the wire, tainting, to get some solder on it like that. Again, just trying to work quickly by not holding the iron on the LED too long. Like that. Again, we don't want to hold it on there too long for risk of damaging something further up, you know, got plastic there, don't want the heat to travel up. And then the same with the yellow. I've just pre-cut some lengths here. And obviously I'm not sure what lengths we're going to need, so I'm just making them ample long enough. Clipping one end. Twist. Heating the wire, not the solder, so the solder takes to the wire and not to the iron. Like I said, I'm going to run through, do all the LEDs first, and then bring each one back, and then wire up the buttons. Okay, so on to wiring the buttons and fitting them into the FMC. What I've done here is I've pre-soldered into these orange wires. And these orange wires are going to be the signal wires from each button, so I need one of these on each button. And I've also pre-soldered all 8 pins on our line of switches. What I'm doing is I'm prepping 2 at a time and then fitting these 2 into the FMC. So as before, minimum time on the switch with the soldering iron. And just solder the 8 wires onto the... I'm keeping all my signal wires on the right hand side of the switch. Okay, so that's that one done. Go on to the next one. Right, so that's two lots of switches, or 2 lots of buttons prepared. They're ready for fitting. What I'll do is I'll just move these out of the way and show you the mess that is becoming this. And you can see how far I've got. It's a little bit tedious. You can see, I'll try and explain here if you can see. Basically this green wire that's coming in here is my ground for the buttons, and then from then on all I've done is linked every button to the first one. So one ground wire and every button on this panel will be linked to the next button along, so it just carries the ground signal all the way through the buttons. And you know from earlier that the yellow wires and the blue wires are the positive and negative for my LEDs, and then obviously the orange wires, as you've just seen, my signal wires for the button presses. This blue wire is the end of the chain, ready to link to my next row, which I'm now about to put in. Finding it easiest to kind of put it over the edge of the table. Just bring the camera up, do something to weight it down. Okay, so starting with the negative LED wire. I'm going to feed that through the hole. And the same with my first switch. First button, I keep calling them switches, they're buttons, aren't they? Next button. And what I've done, you can see in the earlier video we drilled all these little holes for the pins. What I've had to do is make the negative ones bigger, because I've got two wires to attach, and I've made the hole big enough for me to get the iron in from underneath, so that I can solder them while they're in place. And this last, the yellow wire, which is the positive for my LED, I just need to put a bit of heat shrink on it so that it doesn't touch the negative of the next row of LEDs. Remember, they're in blocks of 4, so 4 and 4 go beside each other, so I don't want them touching. Bit fiddly trying to feed these down. Need to make that hole a little bit join into up. I've forgotten to join these holes up here. There we go, there's the first 4 in place. Bit of rubbish stuff. Okay, and then to hold them in place, I'm just using a little bit of hot glue. Hold them in place while the glue dries. Got one there that's not quite sitting flat. I think it's... That's better. There's a little bit of rubbish stuck under it. Okay, glue's dried. We'll go ahead and fit the next 4 the same way. And the blue LED on the right again. Starting to see now why the pre-made FMCs, like, you know, flight deck solutions, open cockpits, etc., are so expensive. I know they use PCBs, obviously take a lot of the work out, but still a lot of work to build one. But a lot cheaper. I would say with the screen, all the buttons, the wiring, and the actual base plates, I've spent over £150. No, a bit more than that, £160. I mean, you compare that with, I mean, the cheapest of the ones I mentioned was open cockpits. I think they retail at about 450-ish, something like that. I can't remember without looking. But it's part of the fun, isn't it? Knit yourself. If you know if anything goes wrong, you know how to troubleshoot it and fix it. Winking them through to make sure they're all sitting flat. Okay, and then same again, a bit of hot glue just to secure them in place. Oops, not that much. And just hold them down while that dries. Actually got a lump of solder just stopping this one from sitting flat. It doesn't matter too much if the switches are a little bit twisted, as long as they're flat. If they're not flat, you're going to end up with a wonky key by the time you get to the top layer. Okay, now onto the fun part. Try and do this as best I can so that you can see it. It would have been easier to show you the first row because you wouldn't have had all these other wires in the way, but I wanted to get myself into a routine before I tell you what I'm doing, in case I get the information wrong, which obviously I don't want to do. Okay, so the first job is to find the link in the chain of grounds, which is here. So that's just now going to join up to our new row. So I'll snip it to a reasonable length. and then take the bit that I've cut off and strip the end on it. Strip the end on the piece that's in there. And twist them two together. Put a little bit of solder on it. And then I'm just going to dig in here and pull the pin straight on one of the switches. There we go. Then I'm just going to feed that down into the hole and at the same time heat it. And that's the first wire done of our new chain. And so now I'll just repeat that process all the way along. And I'll come back to you when I've finished. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes since I left you, and I've just finished looping all my grounds along that row. The next job is to make sure we've got a circuit all the way to the end on our ground wires. So I'm just going to use my multimeter, set it on the beep. And then what we're going to do is put one end on our green wire, which is our first one, ground wire, and touch our last switch or last button. And there you go. So we've got continuity all the way through so far. And what I do is I check that every row. Now I know that that row is fine. It's out with the hot glue again, which I think is going to be a good friend of mine throughout the build of this sim. And all I'm looking to do here is just secure up them wires to make sure nothing gets pulled. So just going to go. Ow. Just burnt myself on the end of the gun. Just going to smother all them wires in some hot glue. Last thing I want to do is get a wire caught and rip it out, so this glue will help. There we go. That's the end of another row. So I've got one more row to fit like that, and then it's onto a different kind of wiring because they're not continuous rows anymore. They start to split up, so it's a case of having to where I wired the positive and the negative of the buttons together, I won't be able to do that further up here because the buttons are further apart. I'll have to do another link wire for the negative to positive on the strings of LEDs. So more wiring. I think it's something I'm going to have to get used to because there's going to be a hell of a lot of it. But yeah, see you again soon. It's been a few days since the last segment of the video, and I've now finished installing all the buttons and getting them wired up. I've installed the rotary encoder as well. This is the mess on the back. This will all be tidied up when it comes to wiring it to the Arduino, but I've allowed ample wire here for what I need. Purely because I wasn't sure if I was going to mount the Arduino on the back of the unit or separate, but I think I've decided I'm going to mount it on the back, and so these will be cut way shorter and tidied up. It's been a few days, mainly getting this top part sorted. I was having a few issues with getting an LED to fit. As these buttons come, when I ordered them it showed an LED in there, but when I actually received them there's nothing in there, they're empty. So I thought, that's okay, I'll just fit a 3mm LED. Nope. 3mm LED won't fit in these 6mm tactile buttons. Basically the lip on the bottom of the LED is too big, so I thought, okay, I'll just sand it down a little bit. Which worked, it got it to slide in, but then the LED was too tall and it stuck out the top of the button. I thought, well, okay, maybe if I just sand the top off the LED. So I did that, and it worked out that I had to sand so much off the LED that it didn't work anymore. So I went online and I got these little 1.8mm LEDs, which I thought will do the job. They fit in there perfectly, but I found that as soon as you started to bend the legs on these LEDs, it actually split the glass of the LED and they just broke every single time. I tried multiple ways of trying to bend them, and I think I broke about 8 or 9 without successfully bending one. So plan C came about from the 12mm buttons. What I ended up doing was taking my snips and these 4 black bits on each corner, I ended up just snipping them off like this. Mind your eyes when you do this because they ping off. So once they're removed, you can then take the white top off, and I discarded the rest of the button, and then in here just remove this piece, is a tiny LED, and these ones you can bend as much as you like and they don't break. So that's what I ended up doing, taking 12 of the 12mm buttons apart and taking the LEDs out and fitting them inside the 6mm buttons. So once they were all fitted and glued in, I then continued the wiring following the same pattern as I'd done further down in an earlier video. The only difference is I had to, instead of soldering the LEDs to each other, I just had to form a little loop from the positive of one LED to the negative of the next, and again keeping a chain of 4 each time, because the voltage of the LEDs is the same because we've used them from the 12mm buttons. That's where I'm currently at the moment. Obviously looking forward to getting it tidied up. I did get around to fitting the screen as well. This is just done with some dots of hot glue. Thought that was the best solution. It's not going to go anywhere.
And with these screens, to power them, they come with this little circuit board. So obviously the ribbon cable on here will attach to this part here. Then you've got, this is just your on-off button for the monitor and your contrast and volume, etc. This is your 12 volt supply power for the monitor, and then the cable from your computer. And I think this is just gonna somehow mount on there like that. Maybe I'll make some little spacer blocks up. So with the wiring out the way, it was time to move on to... Bear with me a second. To gluing up the buttons. So the buttons on this FMC have to be layered up. What you have is, for instance, one of these square buttons. You have the top, then you have a second clear layer, and then you have a third slightly bigger square clear layer. And how it works is the biggest layer goes on in from the back of your FMC, like that. So holding that in with my finger to stop it falling out. The smaller clear square drops in on top of that. And then finally, the actual button drops in on top of that. And what that does is, because the back layer is the biggest, it stops the button from being able to pull out through the front. And obviously these layers need to be glued together. And I did ask on the forums about this because I wasn't sure on the best glue to use, and I had a few suggestions, so thank you for the guys on there. Somebody said about using chloroform, and then there was like a perspex cement, acrylic cement. So I had a rummage through my glues and I found out some. This is Yoo-Hoo Pour. I didn't get around to trying that, so I won't talk about that. I tried liquid poly, which is a plastic cement. This did stick them, but it took way too long. I thought when I first used it, it didn't work, but I put what I tried aside, and when I came back to it half an hour later, it had stuck. And this works by melting the two surfaces of the plastic together. So that is an option if you can, do it and put it aside. I tried acetone because somebody suggested that acetone would work. It did work, but it was more or less the same as the poly. It took a little while to melt the surfaces together. What I did find the best was good old-fashioned Superglue. This is Rocket Superglue by Deluxe Materials. This is the rapid version, which is like a medium thickness. I think they do a I can't forget I forget the name of the thin stuff now. They do 3 thicknesses anyway: thin, medium, and thick. And this is the medium one of the 3. One thing to remember. Obviously we talked about earlier peeling the backs off of the letters. because they come with a protective layer on that's sprayed black, so you need to peel that off. And then also with the smaller and the larger pieces, they have got protective layer on both sides. One's white and one's clear. So you need to make sure you peel both sides off for your backlighting to shine through. This is what you need to end up with your buttons. You've got your top layer, and then you can see there's actually 3 layers glued together there. The button, the smaller square in the middle, and then the larger square on the bottom. And you can see that there's no issues there with the super glue fogging up the perspex. The way I'm going about doing that and making sure they all line up is I'm working on the hole that the letter corresponds to make sure that that letter lines up in that hole. And all I'm doing is putting my finger in the back of the hole, putting the larger piece in from the back and holding that in place, and then taking just 1 drop of super glue. Be careful not to get it on your face. So 1 drop of super glue in the center, then dropping in smaller square piece of clear like that, then another drop of super glue, and then finally dropping in the button, and then just making sure it sits nice and straight in the hole, and then just pinching them together for about 15 seconds. The super glue takes longer to dry on perspex because it's a smooth shiny surface, not a rough surface. There's a lot of these buttons to do, so you do kind of work out your own rhythm, but this is the best way I've found so far. It seems to be working quite well. Okay, once I've pinched it, just let it drop out the bottom. Give it a poke. That's it, and then just put it aside until it fully sets up, and then onto the next one. So it's going to be the same all the way through for the round buttons as well. These buttons up here are going to be slightly different because the very back layer, if you can see in there, I don't know if you can see in there, this just in there is the very edge of my screen, so I don't think I'm going to get a full back layer in, so I'm just going to have to trim the very edge off of the 12 back layers that are going to go in these buttons. It's not going to be a problem. Just thought I'd show that now while I think of it, and obviously the same on this side. Where the buttons are slightly different, this bit I had to query with Sam from Cockpit Sim Parts, because you've got an extra layer that sits in here, and you can see that extra layer has got smaller cutouts, and the problem that I had was that he didn't include the cutout parts, so I had no way to transfer the button press through this part, because this part is made exactly the same way. So you've got your, just grab a bag of bits here. Your bigger part, as with the button down here, drops in from the back. And then this bit would be on top. Smaller part drops in from the front, and then whichever button it would be drops in on top. But there's a void where that extra bit of plastic is, because there's nothing in the middle of it, so I can't transfer the button press through to this piece on the back here. So I got in touch with Sam, and he said it's fine if anybody needs that piece. Obviously he sells these FMCs as dummies, not as working FMCs, but he said if anybody needs the part, he will include them in the kit. You just need to contact him beforehand. And while I was querying, one of these buttons, this one, I don't know what that is, direct intersect, I'm guessing, but I assume that's from an older 737 FMC. The more modern FMCs, they all seem to have a menu button in place of this. So again, I queried that with Sam, and he's going to make me a menu button and send it out to me. And again, if somebody wants a menu button instead of this one, just to let him know when you order, and he'll include that. So it's always good to have a supplier that's willing to do the extra bits. And chat, he's great on chat as well. I talked to him on Facebook Messenger, and he normally replies within half an hour. So I've had no worries about getting hold of him. Very helpful. So I've got plenty more of these buttons to be gluing together. Join me when I've finished, and we will get to sorting out the wiring, tidying it up, and wiring it up to my Arduino. This is what I'm using. It's the Arduino Mega 2560. I didn't want the hassle of having to solder on the end of my wires the pins that fit into these holes. So what I found was this like breakout board, which has got the pins on the bottom ready to drop straight into the Arduino, and then converts the pins to screw fixings along this edge here. All the pins on the Arduino are now converted to a screw fixing, which means I can just trim the end of my wires, pop them in there, tighten the screw up, and it's job done. And this just simply lines up with the Arduino and pushes on like that. Hello everybody, welcome back to SimBuild UK. It's Ian here. It's been a long slug, a hard night to get all the wiring done, but I've got there eventually and cleaned up all the little strands of wire off my workshop floor. So we'll take a close-up view now of what it looks like in its current state. It's nearly finished. Just waiting on some parts to come from cockpitsimparts.co.uk. As I mentioned in the previous segment, he's sending me through some extra bits so I can finish the buttons. Let's take a look. Okay, so here it is, upside down. There we go. These are the parts I'm waiting for just to get the buttons finished, and these ones up here I've just got to trim the back pieces down, which I'm going to be doing in a minute. That's my next job. But the main part I did last night was to get that mess of wiring tidied up and everything interfaced into the Arduino. With regards to power distribution, what I have done is I took a little piece of this stuff. I think they call it strip board or a prototype board. But it's got the copper plating on this side. And I cut a strip of that off and fitted one of these little jack plugs into there like that. Which what that did was gave me a positive strip of copper and a negative strip of copper. If you can see it, it's under all the wires, just in here. You can see where all the blue and yellow wires are going. That's the prototype board. All it's doing is distributing my 12 volts and my ground power to all the LEDs. The only thing that's different about that is, as you know, I did my LEDs in banks of 4. Well, that ended up with being one spare LED. So what I've had to do is add a resistor, which you might be able to just see in there maybe. Just add a resistor to that single LED. It was a I think it was supposed to be a 450 ohm resistor, and I only had a 470, so I fitted that. But it hasn't affected the brightness. It's exactly the same brightness as all the others. Backlighting, to my surprise, all works fine. When I planned to do this, I had in my mind that I wanted, you know, A to Z on the FMC to run through pin 1 to, you know, whatever, 26. It wasn't as easy as that because there was such a mess of cables that I just couldn't keep track of where they were. So what I ended up doing was just wiring them as they came to me, just with the emphasis on trying to keep it neat. And to trace what I'd wired to where, all I did was just wired it like it is now, and then I added just this wire onto the ground. Bit of a twist on the end. Just pop that in there temporarily. And then I took my multimeter with a crocodile clip on it, on the ground side. Turned it on and put it on the beep function, so as soon as it makes a circuit it beeps. And then all I did was started with the first button, we'll say for instance the clear button. I hold it down with my finger and then just plug along the terminals, and there we go, look. And just to double check, just press the button a few times and then just read off the pin number, which is A2. And then I went through the whole FMC. So obviously there's your A to Z, 1 to 10 and all the buttons there, and then what corresponding Arduino pin number it is. So when it comes to interfacing, it's easy to figure out what's wired to where. I've still got to add the LEDs down here, but what I have discovered is there's not enough pins on the 2560 to do the whole FMC, so I've got to add another Arduino Uno, just a small one on top here. But I only need, I think it's about 5 or 6 pins of that, that's all. With the Uno, sorry, with the Mega 2560, pin D, O and D1 are not used in Air Manager for some reason. So what I've got to do is disconnect those two and extend them and then connect them to the Uno that's going on top. The only other thing that's going to be wired into the Uno is this wire here, which is one of the select keys. And the LEDs for the execute light and the message light. At the moment, I'm struggling to find any data refs. On the front here, you have a obviously got your execute light here somewhere. Down here you have your message light. Below that is, I believe, offset light. But I'm struggling to find any data refs for that, so I'm not sure if it's used or not. When I finish up this FMC, I'm going to plonk an LED in there and wire it up to the Uno, just in case I find it at a later date or it hasn't been implemented yet, but it's going to be, and it'll just save taking everything apart again. And over on this side, there's a display fail light. Again, I can't find any data refs in X-Plane for that, so if anybody knows of any or can point me to a forum or anything with any reference to that, that would be great. Really appreciated. But like I say, I'm going to fit the LEDs in both just in case. This is just a quick tip to get rid of light bleed. What I'm doing here is just hot gluing I've cut some cocktail sticks in half, and I'm just hot gluing them on the bottom of the button just to give me something to hold while I paint these 4 clear edges. Because the button is located under here, we're getting light bleed through the side, which is causing light to come out around all 4 sides of the button. So I'm just going to give them all a coat of black paint, probably 2 coats, which is, as you can imagine, going to take quite a while, bearing in mind there's 69 buttons, 4 edges on each button, and 2 coats. So joy of joy, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 3-4 hours, I would imagine. And what I'm doing when I've painted them, I've got this high density like packing sheet that came out of a box of something I've had delivered, so I'm painting them, bonking them in there like that to dry. While I'm on the subject of painting, I need to paint some screw heads, because we don't want horrible silver screw heads on our nice Boeing grey faceplate. So I'm going to be painting 6 of these Phillips head ones, which go through and hold all the panels together, and then 6 of these larger, I believe they're M5 by 30s, and these are M3 by 30s. Paint the heads in the Boeing grey so that everything matches once it's all together, and I'm going to be looking into printing some sort of fake, I think they call them DSUS fasteners, but that'll be a project for a later date. For now, these will do. Well, here it is, everybody, the finished FMC. My extra parts from Cockpit Sim Parts turned up yesterday, and it included the menu key, and the bits I was waiting for were the little backing parts to transfer the button press through the extra piece. I think I said in an earlier video that he didn't include them because it's designed to be a dummy FMC, not a working one. But Sam was good enough to cut them parts for me and make me a menu key, and they came through the post yesterday, so I got them glued up and fitted exactly as I'd done these ones, all these buttons which you saw in an earlier video, and got them all popped in and screwed together last night. And now it's time to get on the computer and get it interfaced and working with the sim. I will admit, I had a hell of a time getting all these buttons to work smoothly once the unit was all screwed together. I had to do a little bit of, probably because of where I painted the edge of all the keys, the extra layer of paint was enough to make them bind. So once I got it all together, you'd press a key down and it'd either stick down or wouldn't go down smoothly. You know, I wanted them all to have a nice tactile click, which you can probably hear. So I got them all working. It took me probably 2.5 hours, 3 hours last night to get them all working smoothly and get it put together. Still a couple of little things I've got to do. I want to paint the brightness knob here, get rid of that white top on it. That's just a generic knob that I found, and I cut the bottom off to make it a bit shorter and drilled the middle out to make it fit. But all the LEDs are fitted. Execute LED is in here. I managed to break a couple of the wires while I was trying to squeeze everything together, so I had to take it all apart again and resolder them up. But I think we're just about there now, so we'll move across to the computer and show you how I'm going to interface it.